So, South African police used tear gas on a large group of protesters. And this was over a race incident. And so, it's from the Associated Press, Saturday, November the 21st. So, Economic Freedom Fighters Party has organized protests in response to a student's prom. They claim that only white kids were invited to. So, South African police used tear gas, stun grenades, water cannons on hundreds of mainly black protesters who gathered again Friday outside a high school in a predominantly white neighborhood that has become a flashpoint for racial tension. So the opposition, or Economic uh, Freedom Fighters Party, has organized protests at the school in response to a student's prom they claim that only white kids were invited to. So the school said that the party was a private function organized by parents and had nothing to do with them. So organizers of the prom say that it was open to all the children taking end of school exams. So although it was limited to 100 because of the pandemic, the coronavirus pandemic, so the issue forced its way into the public discourse in a country with deep wounds from the racist past when a man shared a video of what he said was the whites only party on social media. And so you see the protesters that are here and members of the Economic Freedom Fighters group. They flee the tear gas and the stun grenades and the water cannons that were fired by police during the protest near the back. I believe it's called the Brackenfell High School in Cape Town in South Africa. So this is Friday, November the 20th. So the EFF, which is the Economic Freedom Fighters, acquired a court order for the latest protest at the Bracken High School outside Cape Town, but protesters were met with heavy police and private security presence on Friday. So Economic Freedom Fighters said that its followers were protesting peacefully when police descended on them, and with the tear gas, the stun grenades, and the water cannons, they shot at them. So police said that they began using the force after the protesters had ignored the instruction to stay at an agreed point for the protest and started approaching the school. So some of the protesters were seen carrying machetes, sticks, and golf clubs. And so here, members of the Economic Freedom Fighters protest near the Brackenfell High School in Cape Town of South Africa. This is Friday, November the 20th, and you see them here. And so another protest by the Economic Freedom Fighters descended into violence last week when the black members of the party and whites who said that they were parents of the students scuffled in the street outside the school. So then the white community members attacked the black protesters. And so the chaos moved Nobel Peace Prize winner Desmond Tutu, the former Archbishop of Cape Town, to release a statement through his foundation calling for peaceful and rational discourse and action, not division. So he said that the propagandists on both sides are actually acting with common purpose to undermine racialism. So Brackenfell High School is a symbol of unresolved issues from South Africa's past, the foundation statement said. So you see it pictured here, the groups of members of the Economic Freedom Fighters that are protesting near this Brackenfell High School in Cape Town in South Africa. And so approximately 80% of South Africa's 16 million people are black. But the majority of them still struggle in poverty 26 years after the end of apartheid system of a white minority rule. And so the Economic Freedom Fighters and some others say that blacks are held back by deep-rooted racism that remains in South Africa and especially in neighborhoods like Brackenfell. So Economic Freedom Fighters Deputy Secretary General Poppy Malola said that the community of Brackenfell had even taught the children to be racist. So she also called the police at a protest, who were mainly black, racist. So recent anti-racist protests in South Africa have utilized slogans and imagery and connected to the Black Lives Matter movement in the U.S. So on Friday, Economic Freedom Fighters protesters wore black t-shirts, and they wore an "I Can't Breathe," a reference of killing George Floyd that sparked a widespread protest this year. So Floyd was a black man who also had died in Minneapolis in May after a white police officer knelt on his neck for more than 8 minutes despite Floyd's pleas of help. And so this is just an idea of how these racial issues are not just only in the US, but they're in many other countries. And I also saw, the reason I'm reading this, I also saw what has happened in Brazil. There was an incident that happened in Brazil where thousands have attacked a Brazil supermarket amid violent protest. And so I'm going to go into that. I was looking at that earlier, and I noticed that this is going on where more than 1,000 demonstrators attacked Carrefour, Brazil. Now, I may not be pronouncing all the names correctly because it is in another language or another dialect. So this was in Brazil supermarket in the southern Brazilian city of Porto Alegre on Friday after the security guards beat to death a black man at the store. So a black man was beating at the store, and so there's so many people that have been protesting, and it actually turned pretty violent. And so the killing, which has sparked protests across Brazil. So this guy, he actually is dead now. He was killed. It occurred late on Thursday when a store employee called security after the man threatened to attack her. Cable news channel Globo News said, citing that the Rio Grande do Sul state military police. So amateur footage of the fatal beating and tributes to the black victim were published on social media, so it's probably all over Twitter as well. So he was identified in the local media as by his father, a 40-year-old J.O. Alberto Silveira Freitas. I may not be pronouncing it correctly because it's so you see the demonstrators that are here in this picture, in the still photo, and you see they make a barrier out of car tires as they take part in a protest inside the supermarket. And so news website G1 later reported that an initial analysis by the State Forensics Institute indicated the cause of death by asphyxiation. So that pretty much seals the whole thing. So that's why there's such an outrage right now out there. So in a statement on Friday, the local unit of France Carrefour SA said it deeply regretted what it called a brutal death and said it immediately took steps to ensure those responsible for that they were legally punished. So it said that it would terminate the contract with the security firm, fire the employee as well and in charge of the store at the time of the incident, and close the market or the store as a mark of respect. And so they're thinking about closing it, and you see why. So look what's going on, because people aren't having it because of what has gone on. And so look at the thousands of people that are protesting out here. Demonstrators march in Sao Paulo during the National Black Conscious Day. And so There is a lot of divisions that are going on in other countries. That's why I was bringing this out. And I feel like what has been happening recently, I haven't been on here in a while, is that what I do know is that Trump, he's been basically saying that he won the election, even though he didn't. And it's clearly pretty much the race had been called, and there had been some discrepancies with, um, well, more than discrepancies, but in terms of Trump, he's not trying to concede. He's not even moving to concede, but he's still claiming he's got somewhat of a victory. Um, but he has, on the flip side, he's acknowledged Joe Biden's win. But what I've heard more importantly is that because of this disease, the COVID, that there's important information, important briefings, important things that need to be looked at and need to really be worked on, and they need to start doing their process of action, and they're not able to do that because Trump is not giving up a lot of information and he's not conceding, so he's being resistant. And so it's putting a lot of American lives in danger. The hospitals are filled up where if let's say you may not have COVID, you go to the hospital for something else and you could die if it's serious enough, because the hospitals are overwhelmed with people who are in the rooms with COVID, or maybe they are in the rooms for other things, but most of them, for the large part of it, it's said that they're in there for COVID. They have lots of COVID patients. I was looking not too long ago where a nurse said she was in El Paso, I believe, Texas, and she said people were just dying, that she was on 5 or 6 assignments, and so she went there. She couldn't finish the assignment because it was too traumatic, because they had this room called the pit, and all they do is just pretty much collect bodies of people who are infected with COVID and that died of it. And so it's chaos. And then you have these protests because people are being abused in some type of way. You have this one here in Brazil, and then you have the one in South Africa, and then you have still some divisions here, political divisions, because of what has happened with the election. There has been a lot of things that have happened that I don't believe I've ever recalled ever happening before, where Trump's administration pretty much, they even kind of had protesters um, interacting with counter protesters, and they became pretty irate, and they claimed that there was some type of a voter fraud, which that has been pretty much said to be false, and there is no voter fraud. And so a lot of things have been going on where it has caused a lot of confusion. And then you have the issues that are pretty much gone global, where you have issues surrounding racial tensions, and it has pretty much affected people in all types of ways. If it hasn't been overt or violence, it's been the pandemic, people who are getting evicted because it's hurting the Latinos and blacks, where they are getting evicted, or they could possibly face eviction because they are treated pretty much, unempathetically during this time of COVID. I believe here in California, and what I've looked at is that the moratorium is supposed to go till the end of, I believe it was the end of December, but now it's the end of January, and it could be extended. And now that the COVID out here is the numbers are rising, they're proposing possible lockdowns again. And so the fear is back, and I noticed the shelves are clearing with the toilet tissue. People are starting to get afraid. They're starting to close restaurants. You have to be going home after 10, closing down at 10. And so some people are unhappy about all of that. And this comes at a horrible time because uh, we have holidays that are coming up where people share family time, and that will be interrupted because people are going to scale back on who they invite or if they go anywhere. Um, so there's a lot of confinement, and so it gives you time to think about a lot of the things that are going on. And here you have this horrible beating. This man, he may have done something wrong, but he didn't deserve to get murdered. And so I understand why these people are out here protesting because, it's also, I noticed as I was reading this and I had stopped reading it, I want to jump over to this as well. I was looking at uh, basically it's Ricky Schroder who helped bail out the Kenosha shooter. And so this is a guy who actually I believe he crossed county lines to shoot two protesters that were protesting on behalf of the Jacob Blake incident. So Silver Spoons star Ricky Schroder helped bail out Kenosha shooting suspect Kyle Rittenhouse, says attorneys. And also, I was hearing that his gun that he purchased, the Kyle Rittenhouse guy, he said that he got it with a stimulus check. So why are you buying guns with your stimulus check? That just doesn't sound good. But this is by Elise Soleil, so the attorney of Kyle Rittenhouse, an Illinois teen charged with killing two people during a protest over the police shooting of Jacob Blake, is thanking Silver Spoon's Ricky Schroder for the support. They put a fund together, and I believe attorneys as well. So Atlanta-based attorney Len Wood tweeted on Friday a photo featuring the teen, and Schroder and Rittenhouse lawyer John Pierce free at last, wrote Wood. So something happened here. I believe the reason why I had mentioned this whole thing about this guy is by him being young, by him carrying a gun. I don't think that if it had been someone African American, they would have been able to just shoot at protesters, and they would not have been able to purchase a gun at the age that he is, and freely walk through a crowd of people, of protesters with open guns like that, because there's been many incidences where black people have been killed just for having a cell phone, or reaching for their ID. And I felt like it seemed really unfair. But he's out. The Silver Spoons actor Ricky Schroder donated the bail fund of the alleged shooter. Okay, so hours earlier, Wood tweeted that Rittenhouse was released from jail. So this is the Kenosha County, Wisconsin, after posting a $2 million bail that called out Schroder and My Pillow CEO Mike Liddell. And so I guess there's some kind of video, but you're not going to be able to hear it because I didn't turn it on. So Ricky donated a low six-figure amount in the Fight Back. It's called #FightBack Foundation, which, along with Mike Liddell's generous contribution, helped put the foundation over the top to cover the $2 million bail amount, Pierce tells Yahoo Entertainment. So the nonprofit foundation which Wood, as CEO, is prepared to confront those who seek to take away the right of self-defense. So we #fight back for the Constitution reads its website. Rittenhouse was 17 years old at the time, charged with the first-degree intentional homicide, first-degree reckless homicide for the deaths of two men who participated in August 25th protest over the police shooting 29-year-old black man in Kenosha named Jacob Blake. So those of you who, if you know anything about that, and so he's saying thank you to all his donors, and how God bless all who donated to help the #fight back. And so according to the New York Times, police had a warrant for Blake's arrest on third-degree sexual assault and other charges filed by a woman, because even though this man, I guess he had a history with a woman where there was some abuse involved, and so it says that it was a third-degree sexual assault and other charges filed by a woman who called authorities the night of August 23rd, claiming Blake was at her home. And I believe Blake's attorney, Ben Crump, who represents him, said that he was trying to de-escalate the disturbance between two women instead. So state officials reportedly said that Blake had resisted arrest before he was then shot. And so according to Blake's family, the father of 6 who was shot 7 times in the back by a white officer was left paralyzed from his injuries. So the U.S. Department of Justice filed a civil rights investigation, and 3 officers from the Kenosha Police Department were placed on leave. And so the story continues, so I'm not going to read all of that down, but that's just to jog your memory about that incident. And so here's it says, it's a photo basically, and I believe it might be, I don't know if it's actually on Twitter. And so this is Kyle Rittenhouse, and so he was bailed out pretty much. And so you see where people's thought process is during this pandemic, and what people's political viewpoints are during this pandemic as well. So back over here to the Brazil situation, it says in Porto Alegre, protesters on Friday afternoon handed out stickers depicting the Carrefour logo stained with blood, called for a boycott of the chain. They held up a banner in Portuguese reading Black Lives Matter and the sign calling for justice for Beto, a nickname for the victim. And so the story continues. You can read it at your leisure. And so there is chaos all around, and I just thought that I would read these because this is so important of what's going on. It isn't over. Even though election is somewhat over, there's still the fighting with the president, the current president that is outgoing, and then the president that is elect, Biden, and Vice President Harris, who is coming in, are requesting information so that they can move forward and pretty much act on the things that Americans most need. And for number one is virus, information about the virus, information about, you know, personal information about whatever the president has had from the previous administration. And so these things that he's withholding is critical, and so that's what's putting a lot of people in danger and in threat for their lives. And so this is where we're at. And so let me see. Okay, so South Africa police used the tear gas on the protest. Doesn't seem that much different from what has gone on here in the States, like what happened in Minneapolis when they had the George Floyd incident. Thousands attacked Brazil supermarket amid violent protest after a black man was beaten to death by the security guard. And then you have this story here. Silver Spoon star actor Ricky Schroeder helped bail out the Kenosha shooter suspect. And so it's pretty sad that, it's showing the true colors of people during this time, this troublesome time. So anyway, having said that, I'm gonna let this video go, but it's not over. Like I said in a previous video, it's just beginning. I'm sure we'll see other things that are gonna come out of this. And I even saw an article saying that even though Trump's supposed to, the account that he has is a presidential account on Twitter, but that is a government account, and so that's supposed to change hands to Biden and Harris, I believe, Biden to be exact. And so I believe that even with that happening, we're not going to hear the last of Trump. So having said that, I'm going to let this video go. Like, comment, subscribe, and thank you for listening from the videos that I've had previous. I just really feel like this is not going to be completely over, but what I do know is that they say now we're at a point where they actually have vaccines, and so that's going to be a new issue. And already they're trying to decide who are the first ones that are going to be candidates for the vaccine that are coming out. Believe you me, I got an email that was saying that there's a pharmacies, local pharmacies, and this is in California, that will have vaccine available, and they are alerting people who are hooked up with these pharmacies that if you want this vaccine, that they will keep you posted on when they have the vaccines. And so I'm really excited about that, but then I'm also wondering what's going to come out of this. Is it going to be more issues, political issues? Because with that, having said that, they're trying to decide who's the first persons that are going to get the vaccine. It's going to spill over into, the workplace, because in order to work, they don't want people coming in sick and infected with COVID. They're going to request, just like some jobs will request, that you get checked for certain things, that you're healthy, that you have shots, or that you have, maybe they want you to have CPR and first aid, maybe they want you to have a TB check. They are probably going to want you to have COVID vaccine so that you can work around people safely. They're also going to probably, the schools are going to be affected, where they're going to start requesting parents to not only have the regular vaccines, but also COVID vaccines for the kids, and that might pose a problem to people who have religious faiths or beliefs and whatnot. So I don't think this is over by a long shot. It's going to be more stuff that's going to happen out of all of this. So having said that, just keep your eyes open, your ears open. Thanks for listening.